Alright, so in the previous video, we created the logic for the actual conversation page. In this video, we'll create the view for the settings page. So before we get into the code, open up the terminal and run npm run dev and open up a new terminal instance. Open the PocketBase folder, go and run /PocketBase serve, and then close the terminal, and then we can get straight into the code. So in the components folder, let's create a new file called settings photo change view.svelte. So then we create a script with the context property set to module, and we also set the lang property set to ts right here, and then we just say type component events is equal to, and then we're gonna set one component event, which is gonna be the close, and it's just gonna map to an undefined. So now we create a script, lang set to ts on the script, and then we say export let conversation is of type of conversation. And then we say export let auth model is of type user. And then we say dispatch event. So we create an event dispatcher is equal to create event dispatcher. And we're going to give it the default type of component events. So then that's all we're going to do for our JavaScript. Then inside the markup, let's create a section. Inside, let's create a div with an h1 element inside that says choose an image. Then we're going to say form with the action set to $page. So import the page store. Then we're going to say $page dot URL dot path name / edit conversation photo. And then we give it a method of post. We also give it enc type multi-part form data. And then we say use enhance. So let's import the enhance function from Svelte. So when we say use enhance, we return and we dispatch event close. So then you see that we create a form, and once we submit it, we close this function. We close this component, I mean. So inside of here, we have an input form. So we say input, which is going to be a type of file. And the name is going to be photo, and it's going to have no ID. And it's going to accept JPGs, PNGs, image slash JPG, image slash PNG, image slash SVG, image slash GIF, image slash WebP. And below this, we just create a button that just says submit. So then below this form, we create a button with the class of cancel, and it's going to say back. And we're going to say on click, dispatch event to close. So you see that we could cancel the form or we could submit it, but both of them will close the actual component. So then let's go over to GitHub to get the styles. So once you open up the GitHub link, go to the source folder, open up the lib folder, components. You go here and then you go settings, photo change view, and you just copy the styles. So copy this right there. Oh, and this has to be below the div. So now close this file. And then inside the components folder, let's create a new file called settings member view.svelte. And there's going to be a script. This is going to have a script with the context to module and the lang property set to ts. And it's going to have a component events type. And it's going to map to 1, which is going to be a close function. So it's going to be undefined. And then we're going to say script with the language property set to ts. So then let's create a property on this component saying export let conversation. This conversation is a type of conversation. And we say export let auth model is going to be a type of user. So then we're going to create an event dispatcher. So dispatch event is equal to create event dispatcher. And we're going to give it the component events. So we say let adding members is equal to false. Let search text is equal to an empty string. Let search results is a type of user array. And we're going to copy the search results down, and we're going to say selected users. Then we say let show selected is equal to false. And we're also going to say let submitting is equal to false as well. So this logic is actually so similar to the create conversation page that we could go over to here. We could go here and we could copy this. And we could copy this and we could paste it right here. Let's make sure to rename this component into settings members view. So let's make sure to import all of the things that we need to import. So let's import the PB store, browser, validate user. And let's make sure it's not data.auth model, just normal auth model. And right here, we don't even need this. We just need to, we're just going to set the adding members to false. All right. So in the markup, we're going to create a S if block, validating to see if the PB store is actually true, or I mean valid. And then inside here, we create another S if block, seeing if we're actually adding the members. So in here, we could see if we could copy and paste some of the code so we don't have to type that much. So then let's get this nav right here, and let's copy and paste this over here. And then below this, let's get this main. Let's copy this and let's paste it below here. Let's make sure to import the transition fade. Let's import these icons right now. To import these icons, we could literally just go here, copy the imports, and paste them in right here. So then inside this main, we just rename this. So let's rename symbol to section, and we give the section the class of users. So then right here above the users collection, we paste this in, type in this, and here we're also going to add an extra line for the validation. So we're going to say and $ conversation member query. So you can see in this member query, we make sure that we get all of the IDs for the users that is in the members. So then in the try block, let's just remove the result, and we say that the result, instead of passing in the body, is just going to be a variable that we're going to create right now called form data. And form data, we're going to say let form data is equal to new form data. And then we're going to say form data dot append members, and also JSON dot stringify selected users dot map selected users dot map ID. So then we're going to append the members to all of the selected users, and we're just going to map it JSON to a JSON array of IDs. And instead of saying create conversation, we're going to say $, have this as a template string, and it's going to be $, and we're going to concatenate the page.url.path name !/ add members, and this function we're going to create it in the next video. Let's make sure to import the page. Let's say $page. So right here for this input, let's remove the placeholder, and for this button, we're going to give it a class of user button, and this button is also going to have a class of user button. Below this section, we're going to create a div with a class of actions, and inside we're going to have a button with the class of add, and we're going to say disabled is equal to submitting, or selected users dot length is equal to 0, and on click we're just going to set it to the handle submit function. I'm going to say add selected users dot length members. Below this, we're going to add a button with a class of cancel. I'm going to say disabled is equal to submitting. So if we're submitting, this class is disabled. So on click is going to be a function that sets the adding members to false. And we're going to say cancel. I'm going to say submitting. So then below this div, let's create an else. I'm going to say section dot editing members. So it's going to have a class of editing members. And inside here, let's create a div with the members class. And we're going to create a s each block. So then we're going to loop over the conversation dot members dot filter. And then we're going to say member. So we're going to make sure that the member is not us. So auth model.id as user ID. So we're going to say $const user is equal to $cached users user ID. So if as if, so an as if block, if the user exists. So if the user exists, we create a div with the class of member container that also has a HR next to it. So inside of here, we create two elements, a member div and also a form with the method of post. Inside this member, we create a photo div. Inside of here, we create a as if block, as if else actually. So if the user dot photo, we just say image, and then the source is going to be $pb dot get file URL user and user dot photo, and then alt is going to be just a string. So in here we're going to say fa user circle, and then below the photo we're just going to say dot member information, and here we're going to create two spans, one with the class of name and one with the class of email for the name one and the email for the email one. Make sure I have it like this. And then in the form, we're gonna create an action to the page $page dot URL dot path name question mark slash remove member. So it's gonna be a method of post, and we're also gonna just set the use enhance. So then we're gonna add an input that's gonna be a hidden input, and the name is gonna be user ID. We're just gonna pass our user ID as a hidden input. And then we're going to say button IOMD trash. And let's import the button. Let's import the icon right now. So then let's go back down. And here we could just expand this button. So then below this div right here, we create another class of actions. There's going to be two buttons, button with the class of add and also button with the class of cancel. And we're going to say add and cancel for them respectively. And on click on the add button. So on click, we're just going to say adding members is equal to true. And on click, dispatch event to close. And this is going to be, instead of cancel, we're just going to say back. So then, let's expand this button. Let's expand. Oh, and this button is going to be we're going to have a class of remove member. And now, we're safe to go to the GitHub page, settings member view.svelte. Let's copy down the styles right here. So then we copy, and let's just paste it. Now we can close these two files. And then in the components folder, let's create a new file called conversation settings.svelte. And here we're going to create a script with a context set to module and also the lang property set to TS. And we're going to export type component events is equal to, and we're just going to close, is null. And then we're going to create a script with the lang property set to TS. We're going to have two properties on this component, one called conversation, which is going to be a type of conversation, and one which is going to be user, and we're just going to name it auth model. So this is going to be, so then we're going to create two variables, one called editing members is equal to false, and also one called photo. And then we're going to create an event dispatcher. So dispatch event is equal to create event dispatcher. The template string, so then the custom events is going to be component events. So in here, we're going to create an as if block, checking to see if the PB stores are valid. So in here, we're going to create two constants. One called can leave conversation is equal to not conversation.admins.includes auth model.id and conversation.admins.length. So by default, you can leave the conversation, but if you're an admin and there's less than 2 admins inside the conversation, you cannot leave. So right here, we're going to create another variable called can delete conversation, which is just going to say, is just going to check if we are inside the admins. So let's create a header with an h1 and also a button with the class of close button. So in the h1 we say conversation settings, and for the close button we check the on click, and if the user clicks on the close button we dispatch the close event. So in here we just say iOS close circle. So then let's import the icon right now. So then let's create a else if block. So 3 conditions. So the first one is going to be editing members. So if we're not editing members, we're editing photo, or we're just not doing any of these. So then let's remove this comment. And here we just say settings members view. So then let's import the settings member view. And then we're going to pass in the auth model and the conversation. And then we're going to say on close. We're just going to set the editing member to false. And then we're just going to copy this down to editing members right here. So instead of editing members, it's going to be editing photo. So this is going to be the settings photo change view. And exactly the same thing, but instead of changing the editing members to false, we're going to say editing photo to false. So in the else block, let's create a div with a class of conversation view, conversation actions. So in here, let's create a section with a class of conversation formation that contains a div with the class of conversation image container, which contains a div with the conversation with the class of conversation image. So in here we create a as if block saying conversation dot photo and conversation dot photo dot length is greater than 0. And then let's create the else block. So if we do have the photo, we say source is equal to $PB dot get file URL, conversation, and also conversation.photo. And we're going to say the alt is going to be conversation.name. So if we don't have access to the conversation photo, we're just going to say a div of icon with the class of icon saying MD group. So then let's import the icon right now. So then below the conversation image div, we create a as if block with the conversation dot admins dot includes auth model dot id. And let's fix this error right here. We're gonna say conversation photos, not conversation. So in here we create a button with the class of edit button, and then we say on click. We're gonna say editing. We're gonna set a function that sets the editing photo to true. And here we're gonna say IOMD create. So let's input that icon right now. So now inside the section, but below this div, we're gonna say as if conversation dot admins dot includes auth model. So in here, we're gonna say a form with a method of post, and we're gonna enhance this form. So use enhance, and the action is just gonna be to the $page dot URL dot path name $/ edit conversation name. So inside of this form, let's have an input with the name set to name, and we set the value equal to conversation.name, and then we say button change name. Let's make sure to import the page store. So now if we don't include the admin, we create a span with the class of conversation name and also conversation.name inside of that span. So now before the block, let's create a div with the class of conversation members, the span inside of it, and we're just going to reduce the members array. So members.reduce. So we're going to say previous, current, and I. So we're going to say let user found is equal to $cached users dot, and we're going to say the current dot name. So if not user found and auth model dot id is equal to current, we say user found is equal to you, because look, in our cached users, we don't actually include ourselves as the user. So in this case, we haven't found the user, but it's actually us. So we just say that the user found is us. So if not user found, we just return previous. So now we say if I is equal to 0, return user found, else return a concatenated string with the previous, comma, concatenate with the user found. So by default, we're going to set the default value, the initial value, to an empty string. So below the span, we're going to create an as if block saying conversation.admins.includes auth model.id. And this is going to contain a button with no class at all, just saying that on click, we're just going to set the editing members to true. And inside the text is just going to be edit members. So below the section, let's create another section with the class of danger zone. And let's create a span as the title saying danger zone. And below the danger zone span, let's create a section with the class of danger zone content. Let's create an as if block saying can leave conversation. We're going to say form with the method set to post. And then we're going to say page.url.pathname question mark / leave conversation. So inside of here, we're just going to have a button saying leave conversation. So now let's copy this down. And instead of can leave conversation, we're going to say can delete conversation. So it's going to be to the delete conversation function that we're going to create in the next video. And this is going to be delete conversation. And now that we're done with the HTML, we could go over to GitHub, go to the conversation settings component, and copy down the styles. So let's copy and paste. So then let's close this file. And in the plus page.svelte file, right over here below this div that contains everything. So below the conversation container div, we create a s if block. And we say show conversation settings. So if we show the conversation settings, we create a div with the conversation setting class with the transition set to fade, duration 100, and also on click, we're going to say show conversation settings is equal to false. Div, we're going to, inside of this div, we create another div called conversation settings content. And inside of here, with content. So then we add an event listener for the click, and then we say stop propagation to make sure that this doesn't get called if we click on the actual container, because it would be very bad experience if just clicking around the settings, you get exited out of the settings. So inside of here, we create a conversation. We add the conversation settings. We add the conversation. We add the auth model, which is going to be of type of data.auth model. And then we get the auth on close function. Then we show conversation settings is equal to false. This typo, we're going to say show conversation settings. And now you can close this file, open the terminal, and let's go over to localhost. So you see we're taken straight to the sign up page. Let's log in with the account we made previously. So just to see which account we made, let's just get this, paste it in. Let's go over to PocketBase. Let's log in. And this was danny@email.com. So we're going to log in with that one. Test. So in here, let's say test Danny. We could go over to the settings. Oh, the things don't work. The actual form actions don't work. So you see that if I sign out, so I log out, and I go to test@email.com. No, wait, we have to log in. Test@email.com, test. And we actually sign in with the admin user for the conversation. We can see the edit members. We could go back, we could add members. But because I don't have extra members, I can't actually see the members if I search for them. So that's it. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you have a great day. I hope this video served you value. Like, subscribe, and comment.